12,000 years ago, before any human being had planted a single seed, before any civilization had invented writing, before the first clay pot was shaped by human hands, someone carved a pillar of limestone weighing over 10 tons, decorated it with detailed animal reliefs, transported it without wheels, and erected it inside a monumental temple complex alongside dozens of others. When archaeologist Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute first excavated the site in 1994, he realized within days that the discovery would force a complete rewriting of the accepted timeline of human civilization. The temple predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. It predates the Egyptian pyramids by 7,000. It was built by people who, according to everything archaeology had established, should not have been capable of building anything. That site is on this list. It is not the only object that makes historians uncomfortable. There are swords forged 1,000 years ago with metallurgical purity that was not achieved again until the Industrial Revolution. A Roman cup that uses nanotechnology. A manuscript that no human and no artificial intelligence has been able to read in 600 years. And spheres found inside rock that formed 2.8 billion years before the first human being ever existed. These are not myths. These are real objects, held in real museums, studied by real scientists, published in peer-reviewed journals. And in every case, the questions they raise are larger than the answers anyone has been able to give. Before we begin, leave a comment with your guess. Which century do you think produced the most advanced technology on this list? The answer might change what you think you know about human history. Number 10. Ulfberht Viking swords, Scandinavia and Northern Europe. Between the 9th and 11th centuries, a small number of Viking swords were produced bearing the inscription VLFBERHT on the blade. The spelling varied slightly between examples. The swords were traded, stolen, fought over, and buried with their owners across Northern Europe. Roughly 170 have been found to date, scattered from Norway to the Black Sea. They look like ordinary Viking swords from the outside. They are not. In 2008, a study led by archaeometallurgist Alan Williams of the Wallace collection in London analyzed the steel composition of several Ulfberht blades and published findings that stunned the metallurgical community. The steel in the authentic Ulfberht swords, not the imitations, which also exist, was crucible steel. The carbon content was remarkably uniform at roughly 1.2%, with almost no slag inclusions. To understand why this matters, European swordsmiths of the Viking Age worked with bloomery iron, a low-temperature process that produces steel full of impurities and inconsistent carbon distribution. Crucible steel requires heating iron ore to over 1,700 degrees Celsius, roughly 3,100 degrees Fahrenheit, in a sealed container, a temperature that European furnaces would not reliably reach for another 800 years. The closest known contemporary source of crucible steel was in Central Asia, in modern-day Uzbekistan and Iran, where the process had been developed independently. According to Williams' analysis, the chemical signature of the Ulfberht steel is consistent with ingots from the Volga trade route that connected Scandinavia to the Islamic world. But the trade route explains only where the raw material came from. It does not explain who in Scandinavia had the knowledge to forge crucible steel into finished blades with this level of precision. Crucible steel behaves differently from bloomery iron. It requires different techniques, different temperatures, and different expertise. The smiths who made these swords understood something about metallurgy that their European contemporaries did not, and that knowledge disappeared when production of Ulfberht blades ceased around the 11th century. A sword inscribed with a name that might be a smith, a workshop, or a brand. Steel purity that Europe would not see again for 8 centuries. A trade network connecting Vikings to the Islamic Golden Age, and a body of metallurgical knowledge that appeared, produced 170 masterpieces, and vanished without leaving a single written record of how it was done. Number 9. Roman Dodecahedra, Western Roman Empire. They are small. They fit in the palm of your hand. They are made of bronze or stone. They have 12 flat pentagonal faces, each with a circular hole of varying diameter. Small knobs protrude from each of the 20 vertices. Over 100 have been found across the territory of the former Roman Empire, from Britain to Hungary, from Belgium to Italy. No Roman text mentions them, not once. The Roman Empire produced one of the most extensive written records of any ancient civilization. Romans wrote about their laws, their wars, their engineering, their religion, their daily routines, their recipes, their jokes. They cataloged their tools. They described their weapons. They documented their rituals in exhaustive detail. And yet not a single surviving Roman document, inscription, or literary work makes any reference to these objects. According to a comprehensive survey published by archaeologist Tibor Grüll of the University of Pécs in 2016, no dodecahedron has ever been found in a context that definitively explains its function. Theories have proliferated for over a century. Candle holders, but the holes are the wrong size. Survey instruments, but the geometry is inconsistent. Religious objects, but they appear in secular contexts. Children's toys, but several were found in military camps. Rangefinders for Roman artillery, but experiments have not produced consistent results. Knitting tools for making gloves, a theory proposed in 2014 that gained attention online but was never substantiated by textile historians. According to Grüll's analysis, the dodecahedra share no single consistent archaeological context. Some were found in graves, others in homes, others in hoards buried for safekeeping. Some show signs of heavy use, others appear pristine. The Roman Empire controlled the Mediterranean world for centuries, documented nearly everything they did, and left behind an object found in over 100 locations that no one wrote a single word about. Either the dodecahedra were so ordinary that no Roman thought them worth mentioning, or they were so specialized that the knowledge of their purpose was confined to a group that left no written record. Either explanation is unsatisfying, and after 2 centuries of study, that is exactly where the scholarship remains. Number 8. Lycurgus Cup, Roman Empire, 4th century AD. In the collection of the British Museum in London, behind glass, under controlled lighting, there is a Roman cage cup roughly 15 centimeters tall, roughly 6 inches, carved from a single piece of dichroic glass. It depicts King Lycurgus of Thrace being entangled in grapevines, a scene from Greek mythology. When lit from the front, the cup appears green. When lit from behind, it turns deep red. In 1990, researchers at the British Museum conducted a detailed analysis using transmission electron microscopy. According to their study published in the journal Archaeometry, the color-changing property is caused by nanoparticles of gold and silver embedded in the glass. The particles are extraordinarily small, roughly 70 nanometers in diameter, about 1/1000th the width of a human hair. The precise ratio of gold to silver, approximately 3:7, produces the dichroic effect. This is nanotechnology. Not metaphorical nanotechnology, literal manipulation of material at the nanoscale to produce a specific optical property. Modern scientists working in the field of plasmonics, the study of how light interacts with metallic nanostructures, have confirmed that the Lycurgus cup operates on exactly the same principles used in 21st century nanosensor technology. The question is not whether the Romans made it. They did. The cup exists. The nanoparticles are there. The question is whether they understood what they were doing or whether the effect was an accident of their glass-making process that they recognized and kept but could not explain. According to materials scientist Ian Freestone of University College London, who has studied Roman glass extensively, no other surviving Roman glass object contains nanoparticles in this precise configuration. A small number of other Roman glasses show color-shifting properties, but none as dramatic or as precisely controlled as the Lycurgus cup. It appears to be, if not unique, then extraordinarily rare. A cup that changes color using the same physics that modern laboratories use to detect pathogens. made 1700 years ago by a civilization that had no concept of atoms, no microscopes, and no theory of light beyond basic optics. Either the glassmakers stumbled onto nanotechnology by accident, or the Roman understanding of materials was deeper than any surviving text records. The cup sits in a museum. It still changes color, and no one has found a second one. Number 7. Voynich Manuscript, Beinecke Library, Yale University, USA. In the rare book collection at Yale University, stored under controlled atmospheric conditions, there is a manuscript roughly 240 pages long, written entirely in a script that no one has ever been able to read. The pages contain detailed illustrations of plants that do not correspond to any known species, astronomical diagrams that follow no recognized system, drawings of nude women bathing in interconnected pools of green liquid, and page after page of flowing text in an alphabet that exists nowhere else on Earth. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a Polish book dealer who purchased it in 1912 from a collection of books held by the Society of Jesus in Italy. Radiocarbon dating conducted by the University of Arizona in 2009 placed the vellum, the animal skin on which it is written, to between 1404 and 1438. The ink has been confirmed as consistent with 15th century materials. It is not a forgery written on old material. According to the study published by researchers at the Macron Research Institute, the ink was applied to the vellum when the vellum was new. The manuscript is genuinely 600 years old. Every major code-breaking institution in the Western world has attempted to decipher it. During World War II, top Allied cryptographers, including members of the team that broke the German Enigma code, worked on the Voynich manuscript and failed. In 2017, a team at the University of Alberta applied artificial intelligence algorithms trained on hundreds of languages to the text. They proposed it might be encoded Hebrew. The claim was disputed within weeks by linguists who found the methodology flawed. According to a 2020 analysis by computational linguist Claire Bowen of Yale University, the text displays statistical properties consistent with a natural language. It is not random. It follows patterns of word frequency, word length distribution, and positional letter frequency that match real languages. But no one has identified which language, or whether it is a language at all, rather than an elaborate constructed system. 600 years, hundreds of scholars, the most powerful computers in the world, and 240 pages of a book that no one can read, describing plants that no one can identify, in a language that no one can recognize. It is either the most sophisticated hoax in the history of writing, or a genuine document from a knowledge system that left no other trace of its existence. Number 6. Phaistos Disc, Heraklion Archaeological Museum, Crete, Greece. On July 3, 1908, Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernier was excavating a Minoan palace complex at Phaistos on the southern coast of Crete when he found a flat disc of fired clay roughly 15 centimeters across, roughly 6 inches, in a basement storage room. Both sides were covered in symbols arranged in a spiral pattern from the edge toward the center. That was not what made it extraordinary. What made it extraordinary was how the symbols got there. The symbols on the Phaistos disc were not carved, scratched, or drawn. They were stamped. Each individual symbol was pressed into the wet clay using a pre-made punch, like a typeface. There are 45 distinct symbols on the disc, many of them pictographic, depicting human figures, animals, plants, tools, and abstract shapes. Each symbol appears multiple times, pressed with the same punch, producing identical impressions. According to analysis published by archaeologist Louis Godard of the University of Naples, the use of standardized punches implies the existence of a set of movable type, roughly 3,200 years before Gutenberg. The Phaistos disc is the oldest known example of printing with reusable characters. But here is the problem that has consumed scholars for over a century. The disc is unique. No other object stamped with these symbols has ever been found. No other set of matching punches has been discovered. No other text in this script exists anywhere. It is a printed document from a printing system that produced, as far as the archaeological record shows, exactly one item. The text has never been deciphered. With only 45 distinct symbols and a total of 242 symbol impressions, the sample size is too small for statistical decryption techniques to work reliably. Dozens of proposed translations have been published. None has achieved scholarly consensus. Someone in Minoan Crete invented movable type 3,000 years before the Renaissance. They created 45 standardized punches. They pressed a message into clay in a careful spiral. And then the technology, the punches, the script, and every other text it may have produced vanished entirely. One disc, one message, no way to read it, and no evidence that the system that created it was ever used again. Number 5. Damascus steel blades, medieval Middle East. Between roughly the 3rd and 17th centuries, swordsmiths in the Middle East, primarily in and around the city of Damascus, produced blades with a surface pattern that looked like flowing water. The pattern, visible as light and dark bands across the polished steel, was not etched, engraved, or painted. It was a property of the metal itself. The blades were legendary across the medieval world. Crusaders brought accounts back to Europe of swords that could slice through a falling silk scarf, cut through European blades, and maintain their edge through sustained combat without dulling. In 2006, a team led by material scientist Peter Pofler of the Technical University of Dresden published a study in Nature that changed the understanding of Damascus steel permanently. Using high-resolution transmission electron microscopy, they analyzed a 17th century Damascus blade and found carbon nanotubes and cementite nanowires within the steel structure. Carbon nanotubes were first identified by modern science in 1991. They are among the strongest materials known to exist. Their presence in a blade forged centuries ago implied that the forging process, through some combination of temperature, timing, and raw material, inadvertently created nanostructures that modern metallurgy did not discover until the age of electron microscopes. The raw material was wootz steel, produced primarily in southern India and Sri Lanka, shipped to the Middle East as ingots. The specific impurities in the Indian iron ore, including trace amounts of vanadium, molybdenum, and chromium, appear to have been essential catalysts in the formation of the nanostructures during the forging process. By the 18th century, Damascus steel production had ceased. The exact reason is debated. According to research by John Verhoeven of Iowa State University, the most likely explanation is that the specific mines producing ore with the necessary trace elements were exhausted. When the raw material changed, the process stopped working. The smiths may not have understood why their techniques suddenly produced ordinary steel instead of Damascus blades. They knew the how, but not the why. Nanotechnology forged by hand in the medieval Middle East. Carbon nanotubes created by accident in a process that required specific ore from specific mines using techniques passed from master to apprentice with no written theory. When the mines ran dry, the secret died. Not because the smiths forgot, because the earth stopped providing the ingredient they never knew they needed. If this is what historians are already struggling to explain, what comes next made some of them stop trying. So far, which of these do you think is the greatest evidence that we have forgotten our own history? Hold that thought. The next 5 might change your answer. Number 4. Quimbaya Airplanes, Gold Museum, Bogotá, Colombia. In the collection of the Museo del Oro in Bogotá, among thousands of gold artifacts produced by the Quimbaya civilization of pre-Columbian Colombia, there are several small figurines roughly 5 to 7 centimeters long, about 2 to 3 inches, dated to approximately 1000 CE. They are officially catalogued as zoomorphic figures, stylized representations of birds, fish, or insects. That is the institutional position. In 1994, 2 German aeronautical engineers, Peter Belting and Konrad Lubers, examined the figurines and noted features that are not consistent with any known animal. Delta wings, vertical stabilizers, triangular tail fins set at precise angles, an upright tail fin perpendicular to the horizontal stabilizers, a fuselage with a symmetrical cross-section. They built scaled-up replicas, maintaining the exact proportions of the original figurines, and tested them. According to their findings, presented at the Ancient Astronaut Society conference and later documented in several publications, the replicas achieved stable powered flight. The proportions of the Quimbaya figures, when scaled up, produced aerodynamically viable airframes. Mainstream archaeology has not endorsed the aeronautical interpretation. According to archaeologist Santiago Giraldo of the National University of Colombia, the quimbaya produced hundreds of stylized animal figurines, and the handful that resemble aircraft may simply represent artistic abstraction of flying creatures like rays or catfish viewed from above. But the aeronautical objection has not been fully resolved either. The specific combination of delta wings, vertical stabilizer, and triangular tail section does not correspond to any known animal viewed from any angle. Fish do not have vertical tail fins perpendicular to horizontal ones. Birds do not have delta wings, and the cross-section of the fuselage is symmetrically rounded in a way that matches no biological organism but does match a conventional aircraft body. A civilization that had no metal tools capable of precision engineering produced gold figurines with proportions that generate aerodynamic lift when scaled up. Either the quimbaya saw something flying that we do not know about, or they independently invented an aesthetic shape that happens to solve the same engineering problem that 20th century aerospace engineers solved deliberately. Both explanations are uncomfortable. That is why the figurines sit in a museum labeled as fish. Number 3. Stone spheres of the Dodecahedron, Osa Peninsula, Costa Rica. In the 1930s, workers clearing jungle for banana plantations in the Dodecahedron Delta of southwestern Costa Rica began finding stone spheres. Perfectly round, some small enough to hold in one hand, others over 2 meters, roughly 6.5 feet in diameter, weighing up to 16 tons. They were scattered across the jungle floor, some alone, some in lines, some in clusters. Over 300 have been found to date. Many were moved from their original locations during agricultural clearing. Some were dynamited by treasure hunters who believed they contained gold inside. They did not. According to UNESCO, which designated the stone spheres as a World Heritage Site in 2014, the spheres were produced by the Dodecahedron culture between approximately 600 and 1500 CE. They were carved from gabbro, a hard igneous rock, using stone tools. No metal tools were available to the Dodecahedron. The precision is the problem. Measurements conducted by archaeologist John Hoops of the University of Kansas using modern surveying equipment found that the largest spheres are round to within 1 to 2% of perfect. For a 2-meter sphere, that means the surface deviates from mathematically perfect roundness by no more than a few centimeters across the entire surface. Achieving this with stone tools, by hand, on a 16-ton block of igneous rock requires a method of measurement and verification that no one has been able to replicate experimentally. No one knows what the spheres were for. Their original arrangements were destroyed by the banana plantations. Some appear to have been placed in astronomically significant alignments, but the evidence is incomplete because so many were moved. No Dodecahedron text exists. The culture that made them left no written record. The manufacturing process is also unclear. Experiments using stone tools on gabbro produce rough approximations, but not the near-perfect sphericity observed in the originals. Some researchers have proposed that the spheres were shaped by controlled thermal fracturing, heating and cooling the rock to remove material in layers, but no experimental replication has achieved the precision of the originals. 300 spheres, 16 tons each at the largest, perfectly round to within 2%. Made with stone tools by a culture with no writing, no metal, and no known mathematical system. We do not know how they made them. We do not know why. And we cannot make one of equal precision using the same tools today. Number 2. Klerksdorp Spheres, Ottosdal, Northwest Province, South Africa. In the pyrophyllite mines near Ottosdal, South Africa, miners have been extracting small metallic and mineral spheres from rock strata for decades. The spheres range from roughly 1 to 10 centimeters in diameter. Some are flattened discs, others are nearly perfect spheres. Several have parallel grooves running around their equator with geometric precision. The rock they are found in is Precambrian mineral deposit roughly 2.8 billion years old. 2.8 billion years ago, there were no animals, no plants, no fungi. The most complex life on Earth was single-celled. Multicellular organisms would not appear for another 2 billion years. The idea that anything could have manufactured a grooved metallic sphere at that time is, by every established principle of geology and biology, impossible. According to a 1984 study by geologist Paul V. Heinrich, published in the journal Skeptical Inquirer and subsequently expanded in peer-reviewed geological publications, the most widely accepted explanation is that the spheres are naturally formed concretions. Concretions form when minerals precipitate around a nucleus in sedimentary or volcanic rock, gradually building up in concentric layers over millions of years. The process can produce remarkably spherical shapes. But the grooved spheres present a difficulty. According to Rolf Marx, former curator of the Klerksdorp Museum, who handled hundreds of specimens, some of the grooved spheres are so precisely formed that when placed on a flat surface, they are balanced to the point where vibration causes them to rotate slowly. Marx stated in a 1996 interview with the Fortean Times that he was not convinced that all specimens could be explained by concretion alone. The counter-argument, published by Heinrich and supported by mainstream geological consensus, is that the grooves are natural features formed by fine-grained lamination in the host rock, and that the apparent precision is a product of human pattern recognition applied to natural variation. The debate has not been resolved. The spheres continue to be extracted from rock that is inarguably billions of years old. Most geologists consider them natural. A minority considers certain specimens anomalous, and the rock they come from predates any known life form capable of holding a tool. An object that looks manufactured, found in rock older than complex life. The most likely explanation is that nature made it. The uncomfortable question is why nature made it look so much like something that was designed. 2.8 billion years of mineral accumulation, and the result has grooves, symmetry, and balance that the human brain instinctively reads as intentional. Either the brain is wrong, or the timeline is. Number 1. Göbekli Tepe, carved pillars, Şanlıurfa Province, Turkey. And now, the discovery from the beginning, the one that changed everything. In the rolling agricultural hills of southeastern Turkey, roughly 15 kilometers, 9 miles, northeast of the city of Şanlıurfa, a ridge rises above the surrounding farmland. For centuries, local farmers plowed around a cluster of large stones protruding from the hilltop, assuming they were natural outcrops. In 1963, a joint survey by Istanbul University and the University of Chicago noted the site as a possible archaeological location, but did not excavate. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt of the German Archaeological Institute visited the ridge. He recognized immediately that the stones were not natural. They were the tops of massive T-shaped limestone pillars buried vertically in the earth. He began excavating the next year. What he uncovered over the following 2 decades is the oldest known monumental architecture on Earth. Radiocarbon dating published in multiple peer-reviewed journals, including studies by Schmidt himself and later by researchers from the Şanlıurfa Museum and the German Archaeological Institute, places the earliest construction phase of Göbekli Tepe at approximately 9,600 BCE, roughly 11,600 years ago. The pillars are enormous. The largest discovered to date stands roughly 5.5 meters, 18 feet, tall, and weighs an estimated 10 to 20 tons. They are arranged in circles, with 2 larger central pillars surrounded by smaller ones set into low stone walls. The complex contains at least 20 such circles, and ground-penetrating radar surveys suggest that the majority of the site remains unexcavated. The pillars are not blank. They are covered in elaborate relief carvings. Foxes, boars, snakes, scorpions, vultures, lions, spiders, and abstract symbols are carved into the limestone with precision and artistic sophistication that implies a mature tradition, not a first attempt. Here is the problem that Göbekli Tepe poses for the established timeline of human development. In 9,600 BCE, according to every other archaeological site on the planet, humans were hunter-gatherers. They had not yet domesticated plants. They had not invented agriculture. They had not developed pottery. They had not built permanent settlements. They lived in small, mobile bands, following game and gathering wild food. Agriculture, the event traditionally understood as the catalyst for permanent settlement, monumental architecture, social hierarchy, and organized religion, is dated to roughly 9000 BCE at the earliest, and in most regions, significantly later. Göbekli Tepe predates agriculture by at least 600 years. According to Schmidt, who led the excavation until his death in 2014, Göbekli Tepe inverts the conventional sequence. The traditional model says agriculture led to settlement, settlement led to surplus, surplus led to specialization, specialization led to religion and monumental building. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite. The desire to build a monumental site, possibly for religious or ceremonial purposes, may have motivated the transition to agriculture, not the other way around. The engineering challenges are significant. The pillars were quarried from limestone bedrock roughly 100 meters from the site. One unfinished pillar, still attached to the bedrock in the quarry, measures roughly 7 meters, 23 feet, and would have weighed roughly 50 tons if completed. Moving even the smaller 10-ton pillars across 100 meters of uneven terrain, without wheels, without draft animals, and without metal tools, required coordinated labor on a scale that hunter-gatherer bands were not believed capable of organizing. According to a 2020 study published in the Cambridge Archaeological Journal by researchers from Edinburgh University and the German Archaeological Institute, geometric analysis of the pillar arrangements indicates they were planned using standardized units of measurement, suggesting a level of abstract mathematical thinking not previously associated with pre-agricultural societies. And then there is the most perplexing element of all. Göbekli Tepe was not destroyed. It was not abandoned due to environmental catastrophe. Around 8000 BCE, roughly 1,600 years after construction began, the entire complex was deliberately buried, intentionally filled with earth and debris by the people who used it. The pillar circles were carefully packed with soil, refuse, and animal bones until they were completely covered. The ridge became a hill, and the site was forgotten for 10,000 years. No one knows why they buried it. No text exists. The people who built Göbekli Tepe left no writing. The decision to construct one of the most ambitious building projects in human history, use it for over a millennium, and then carefully, deliberately bury it, remains one of the most baffling acts in the archaeological record. A temple complex older than agriculture, carved by people who had no permanent homes, engineered with mathematical precision by a society that had no writing, decorated with artistic sophistication that implies centuries of tradition we have never found, used for 1600 years, and then buried by the same people who built it for reasons that 10,000 years of subsequent human history have not been able to explain. The accepted story of civilization says that humans settled down, grew food, built villages, and then created religion and monuments. Göbekli Tepe says that story is backwards. And the archaeologists who study it have spent 3 decades trying to reconcile a discovery that refuses to fit the narrative. The pillars are still there, the carvings are still sharp, the questions are still open, and most of the site is still underground, waiting. 10 objects, thousands of years of craftsmanship, knowledge, and intent that the modern world cannot fully account for. Viking steel with industrial purity forged in the Dark Ages. A Roman object that no Roman mentioned. A cup that uses physics we discovered 5 years ago. A book no one can read. A printed disc from 3,000 years before the printing press. Medieval nanotechnology in a sword blade. Gold airplanes from pre-Columbian Colombia. 300 stone spheres carved to mathematical perfection with no metal tools. Grooved metallic spheres in rock older than complex life. And a temple built before farming, before pottery, before writing, and then buried by the people who built it. Which artifact changed what you thought you knew? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe so the next discovery reaches you. The next video goes somewhere history tried to forget. We will see you there.